Okay, so here we go with another DC Multiverse unboxing. This is the third Arkham City figure that I've opened. I did Catwoman a long time ago and finally got around to getting the remaining three of these figures. Did the Penguin yesterday. Tomorrow I will be opening Batman himself. And then we'll complete the Solomon Grundy Build-A-Figure. And this is Ra's al Ghul. So a lot of the time, I hear a lot of variations on how the name is pronounced. It's Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul or whatever. But the first time I ever actually heard this word pronounced was on Batman, the animated series, and they said Ra's al Ghul. Now, I don't always roll the R, because I didn't always roll the R on the show, but the first time he shows up, David Warner, doing the voice of the character, says, "I am he who is called Ra's al Ghul." And I'm like, oh, okay, finally, now I know how to pronounce this word that I've been reading in comic books my entire life. Had no idea how to pronounce it. He's such a cool villain. I don't know how to say his name. I think I always just said Ra's al Ghul when I was a kid, but the animated series pronunciation, that stuck with me. And I know people will say, well, I just think Ra's sounds better than Ra's. And I'm like, whatever, you can pronounce it however you want. I don't really even care, but that's how I pronounce it. So, here's the back of the figure. It's the same as the back of the Penguin figure, only it's got Ra's Build-A-Figure parts highlighted instead of Penguins. And then we see the cross-out artwork for Batman, Catwoman, Ra's al Ghul, and the Penguin. So let's go ahead and open them up, because, we've been over the packaging before. Don't really need to go over the packaging again, do we? You would have seen enough of these Mcfarlane unboxings by now, right? Unless this is your first time watching my channel, in which case, welcome to the channel. So I don't forget, let's make sure we do this first thing and get the trading card off the backing. And thankfully, I was able to get the bubble to open fairly well. This is one where they're on two separate bubbles, which I prefer for the trading card and the stand to be on one single bubble, because that makes it easier for me to get off the trading card, but can't win them all. All right, so we have the figure stand, the standard DC Multiverse figure stand with the DC emblem embossed on there in glossy black. And there is the trading card with a picture of the action figure. It's a little shiny because of my monitor, but hopefully you get a good look at that. And that's what the back looks like. The bio reads, Ra's al Ghul, Batman Arkham City, data file. Now, see, sometimes they would spell it with like a little line over the A, which does imply that it's what do they call long A, short A? I don't remember. We went over this when I was in school, but that was like 40 years ago. So, but it's the same line that's over the U, so that would imply that Ghul, that U, Ra's. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Real name Ra's al Ghul, or real name unknown, Ra's al Ghul, adoptive name. Little is known about the early years of the nearly immortal Ra's al Ghul, leader of the League of Assassins, whose name means the demon's head. He has lived for many centuries due to the Lazarus Pit's mystical and alchemical brews that restore his youth. A brilliant master of strategy and organization, Ra's goal is to save the Earth from the eventual ecological devastation by destroying most of its population. I suppose it's most of its human population, but whatever. He recognizes Batman as both a worthy foe and a possible ally, except Batman cannot accept Ra's dystopic worldview. I didn't mention Talia on there. Was Talia in the video game? I figure she was probably in the video game. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't played the video game. And that seems like as good a time to put the disclaimer. Please remember that I'm not a big video game person. I haven't played these video games. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about them. I know I've seen the designs online, and most of the designs I like pretty well because I thought they were pretty cool updates on the comic book, like accurate to the comic books, but still kind of put their own sort of spin on it, which I enjoyed. Raish looks like he's not going to be any exception. But my point is when I go through here and I'm critiquing the look of the character on the figure, you don't have to come back to me, well, that's how it looked in the video game. I know that's how it looked in the video game, but I'm kind of critiquing the design from the video game while I'm critiquing the figure. So just so we're on the same page as far as that goes. All right, so let's go ahead and get out Raish's one accessory, which is this cool sword. It seems almost kind of like, to me, like almost like a cross between a scimitar and a ninja sword. It's a pretty cool design. I actually have a model of this for 3D printing, so I print it out for action figures a lot. Unfortunately, mine's a little warped, but yeah, I use it as a Snake Eyes sword sometimes because it also kind of looks vaguely like the sword that the '85 Snake Eyes figure came with. Let's see. Then we got to get these Solomon Grundy arms out. There are double rubber tabs for some reason. There we go. And of course, I got to put the rubber tab right where it's going to get into the crook of the elbow articulation. And it's a good thing they got those rubber tabs in there so they don't fall out. Okay, you have to pull them out. Wasting money on rubber tabs. They won't paint in Superman's whole belt because they're so cheap, but boy, do they love rubber tabs. God, it's a good thing they put that rubber tab on there. Otherwise, that thing might have fallen right out. You can see me struggling with that? My God, rubber tabs are useless. Stop using them. They're stupid. There we go. All right, so now we got the Solomon Grundy arms out, and we can see that one has a solid fist and one has an open hand. We don't need to spend too much time talking about this because eventually I'm going to do a video talking about this figure on its own. And yes, I realize I still have to do the anti-monitor, or the monitor, not the anti-monitor. So just be patient with me on that. Man, this is tough going. There, I got that one in. It's got a ball in a socket, so you just got to get it in there. But it's a bit tougher than I would have expected. There we go. All right, so half of our Solomon Grundy is completed, and tomorrow we will be opening up Batman, and that will give us the legs. But so far, that's what he looks like. Pretty cool. All right, so we're going to set him aside again. Now, on to the main villain himself. So Ra's al Ghul was created in like the early 1970s, and during that time, the Batman television series with Adam West had just ended. Somebody was talking about smack about Adam West in one of the comments on one of my videos, and it wasn't even like a clever response. It was just Adam West with a thumbs down, and I'm like, oh, you're on the wrong channel, buddy. This is absolutely a pro Adam West channel. Now, if you want to talk crap about Robert Pattinson, I'm all for that. Robert Pattinson sucks. All right, so there we go. We got another rubber tab around this elbow. And again, it's a good thing they got him rubber tab into this thing so he won't fall out. Pointless. Meaningless. All right. And there we have Ra's al Ghul out of the package. Now, this is an original design, and I think it was, it still takes a lot of classic influences to it. But let's go over some of the minutia of this design. First of all, I like this leather breastplate. I think that's pretty cool. It does give him a bit of a like a feeling like an ancient warlord or something like that. That's pretty neat. Uh, One of the things they obviously added to their design is he has these dragon tattoos on his arms, which he never had in the comics, as far as I can remember. But yeah, it's fine. I don't really have a problem with it. Uh, One thing that I always look for in any interpretation of Ra's al Ghul is in Neil Adams, who designed the character initially, in his original design, he did not give Ra's al Ghul eyebrows. And as you can see, this one does indeed have eyebrows. Now, I'm usually pretty forgiving about this, and I'll be forgiving about it in the case of this figure too. And the reason that I'm forgiving about it is because it's not something that a lot of people pick up on for whatever reason. And when I point it out to people, people are often actually surprised, and they don't realize, oh, he never had any eyebrows? Yeah, go back and look at that Neil Adams artwork. But, he'd often draw a lot of shading around the eyes, and that's why, you kind of read that as eyebrows. A lot of people do that. So that's understandable. It's an understandable oversight, is what I'm saying. But Ra's al Ghul was not intended to have eyebrows. They did make his hairline, I think, a little bit lower than it's usually drawn in the comics, where he has that pretty extreme widow's peak. If my hair weren't so thin, I would have an extreme widow's peak right now, because that's about where the hairline is. I promise there's a hairline there. You wouldn't be able to tell. But yeah, I like the face sculpt a lot, though, even though he does have eyebrows. But it looks a lot like Christopher Lee, I think, which is a lot of people's fan casting. Like, if they had have actually made a Batman movie in the early 1970s, and Christopher Lee could have played Ra's al Ghul as the villain, that would have been pretty cool. And he's got these two loops on the side of his belt, and I don't know if it's necessarily designed for that, but you can put the sword in there for storage. So that's pretty cool that he can hold his sword there when he's not using it. So I like the color. It's like this really dark green with this looks like some even darker, kind of slightly more brownish green on the inside of the pants legs. He's got these kind of baggy, almost like ninja type pants, which doesn't really incorporate the knee joint into it very well, for being honest. I think they probably could have done a better job with that. And one thing that I noticed also is that his skin is much paler than I would have made a Ra's al Ghul figure. Now, I know that the Demon's Head moniker, Ra's al Ghul, it's not his actual birth name, it's a name that he claimed. So he's not actually technically like an Arab person, even though that's an Arabic name. But at the same time, dude still was a guy who lived in the desert most of his life, and I figure he probably would not be this pale. That's just my opinion. I think he should probably have a little bit more of a tan. But it is worth noting that when Neil Adams was designing this character, one of the things that he was going for with the design was he didn't want him to necessarily look like he was in any kind of ethnicity that was around today. He was so old that he was actually of a race that didn't even exist anymore. So that's what I think is one of the more interesting things about his design. It looks like he has brown eyes. Again, Neil Adams, I keep going back to Neil Adams, but he's my favorite Batman artist, and he designed this character. He had intended for Ra's al Ghul to have yellow eyes. So this figure does not have yellow eyes, but just pointing it out, not complaining. His facial hair is a little bit different from how the standard comic book version of Ra's al Ghul is, and different from how Neil Adams designed it, because Neil Adams just kind of had like this kind of goatee where it was just these two little tufts over here on the side, like a Fu Manchu, but as a goatee instead of as a mustache. And you can see that his little tufts of hair actually connect to these long lamb chop sideburns. I actually think that's a really cool look. I think that looks really neat. I approve of that little update. I think that's pretty good. And you see he's got a little bit of a soul patch there. So I like the facial hair, even though it is a little different from how Ra's is traditionally presented. The great thing about this design is that even though it takes a lot of liberties and makes a lot of innovations that are different from how the character is traditionally presented. It's still very much recognizable as Ra's al Ghul. Like anybody who knows the character would see this character and be like, "Oh, that's Ra's al Ghul," or that's Ra's al Ghul if they pronounce it that way. So, so yeah, let's go ahead and put the sword in his hand and see how he looks with the sword in his hand. This is a really cool sword, like I said, and he grips it nicely. There we go. Looks really cool with the sword. One thing that disappoints me looking at the Batman figure is he does not come with a sword. So I'll have to 3D print him one. But yeah, they're gonna have to do some sword fighting. That's gonna look pretty cool. So maybe I could have him dueling with the Penguin, since I was able to get a cool dueling pose out of the Penguin. He's got like a little bit of Arabic writing etched into the blade. I'm not sure what that says, but dollars to donuts, it says Ra's al Ghul. So yeah. All right. So we've talked enough about the design of the figure. I think I'm happy with the design of this figure. Let's take the sword back out of his hand. Let's talk about the articulation. All right. So Ra's al Ghul can look up about that far. He can look down about that far. He can tilt his head kind of quizzically from side to side. His head can rotate all the way around. You can move his head around any which way you want to. Great head articulation. He doesn't look up quite as much as you might like, but that's probably because his hair is kind of a little bit longish in the back. Arm rotates all the way around at the bicep. There is this breastplate, shoulder plate, whatever you want to call it. The shoulder armor on the breastplate kind of hinders his shoulder movement a little bit, but that's to be expected. His arm does rotate all the way at the bicep. It looks like his arms can move up about that far, but again, that shoulder pad is going to kind of press it back down a little bit. So that's really about as far as you're going to get it. He does have double jointed elbows. Great range of motion at the elbows. They bend up all the way. He's got the cool Mcfarlane ball joint at the wrist, so we can move his wrist around any which way we want. And again, going back to the sword, that can give you some pretty cool options with how you pose him with the sword. Like that. Be cool. All right. He's got it seems like he has the kind of standard Mcfarlane torso articulation almost, but I think because of like how they did this breastplate, and it is like a rubber breastplate that fits over the entire chest, is like a sheath. There's no joint in the middle of this, and I figure that's because they didn't want to break up the design of the breastplate. It's not quite as well articulated as these torso joints usually are, but it still follows the same basic principle, I think. So not quite as good as usual, but still good. It's passable. All right. So leg can kick up about that far, so good range of motion for the leg. He does have the rubber Mcfarlane trunk piece like we're used to having, but you can't really see much of it because of the overhang of the breastplate with the thick belt and everything. So, but he's got good range of motion at the hips. And then I already talked about the ball joint, or no, sorry, the double joint at the knee, and you can see what I'm talking about, where like it doesn't really incorporate into the folds of the pants very well. They could have done a better job with that. So, no boot cut as we're used to, even though it's a separate piece of plastic, and they probably could have made it work as a boot cut. They did not. So Mcfarlane rarely ever does that. Toe can point down about that far, point up about that far. Even though it doesn't have a boot cut, it does have the cool Mcfarlane ball joint at the ankle, so he can still move his ankle around any which way, and it pretty much makes up for not having a boot cut. Really, at that point, having a boot cut would be just kind of like, just kind of supporting the ball. It's one of the. It's not 100% necessary with considering how well these ankles are articulated. You can get pretty much any articulation you want to out of that ankle. So yeah, that's a pretty cool pose. So I'm pretty happy with this figure. I think they did a good job with him. One thing that I think is missing, though, is I kind of feel like he needs a cape. So I'm probably going to make him a cape myself. I think that would be pretty cool. But, and again, I know somebody's going to say, well, he didn't have a cape in the video game. Well, I don't care. Maybe he should have had a cape in the video game, too. What are you going to do? Like I said, I'm critiquing the look of of him in the video game as well while I do this. But I mean, that's just a little nitpick. It's not like it's not a deal breaker for me. It's not like, well, this is a shitty action figure now because he doesn't have a cape. I'm not gonna be like that. But it would have bumped him up a little bit in my mind. To me, this figure is like at least a solid 8, maybe even a 9. I really like it, but a cape would have made it for me a solid 10. Like I think that would have been really cool. That's just me, though. That's just my opinion. So that's pretty much it for Ra's al Ghul. Tune back in again tomorrow for Batman. If you want to make sure you don't miss the Arkham City Batman unboxing, make sure you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Hit that little bell if you want to be notified anytime I go live. If you don't want to miss those. Let me know in the comments what you think about this figure and what you think about the character of Ra's al Ghul in general, and how do you pronounce his name. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this episode. We will talk to you next time. Bye.